This is Volusia Today, a public information radio program brought to you by the County of Volusia. Here is your host, Kevin Captain.
Welcome to Volusia Today. I'm Kevin Captain, and I'm joined by co-host Heather Belden. Thank you for tuning in this morning. Volusia Today is made possible by our sponsors, the Daytona Beach International Airport, the Ocean Center, Volusia Recycles, and Votran Public Transportation. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. So we have part two of an interview with Dr. James Fulcher. He's the Chief Medical Examiner for District 7's Medical Examiner Office, which includes all of Volusia County. So, Dr. Fulcher, thanks again for being on the show with us.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Hey,
Thank
you bet.
Heather.
You bet. So, I know that you're a Virginia native, and
Yes.
because I talk funny, you can tell I'm from Wisconsin, where all the good cheese, beer, and bratwurst people. There you go.
People. Oh, that's sweet, Heather.
So out of our 60-plus counties in my home state, there's coroner's offices and medical examiner's offices. And can you explain the difference?
Yeah, this is a question that we get often. What is the difference between a coroner and a medical examiner? In a nutshell, a coroner is an elected official for that jurisdiction that does death investigation. A medical examiner is generally appointed, rarely elected, but they're an actual physician, generally, not always, but generally board certification in forensic pathology. Coroner states are generally around the South and the Midwest. It's an older system. It arrives to us from Old English law, where the crowner was actually a tax levier for the king based on who died in that county or that municipality.
Wow.
So they would go around and count who died, and there was a tax to be paid. The coroner system, it's not as bad as a lot of medical examiners want it to be. I worked for 10 years in a coroner state in South Carolina.
Okay.
I was chief deputy. Now, my county was a dual county. We had both a medical examiner's office and a coroner's office. The coroner did the scene investigation, and we did the autopsies. If you're in a coroner state that doesn't have that type, or a county that doesn't have that set up, the coroner has to find a private pathologist to do their autopsies. That's one of the greatest challenges with the coroner system, is the coroner probably can't do the autopsies themselves. So they got to find someone who's hopefully confident to contract out that work to. The other real negative of a coroner system is, while it might be great, the uniformity and the consistency isn't there. This is going to blow your mind. But when I first started in South Carolina, the qualifications to be a county coroner were two things: over the age of 18 and registered to vote.
Oh, no.
And that was it. Now, they have since improved that. They have seen the light, and there are educational requirements. Thank the Lord, they're actually pretty good. But in the old days, anyone could be a coroner. They had a blind coroner at one point, believe it or not. They had coroners that, and they still do, probably shouldn't say it, but I'll just say it, they operate funeral homes.
I'm waiting for a joke to come here, but
No, it's not a joke.
Punchline, but that's the truth.
No, the truth is they operate funeral homes, and the whole reason they do it is self-referral. And that's a huge conflict of interest. A coroner
Absolutely.
and a funeral director should never be the same person in the same county. Yet, there we are. The medical examiner system, has its problems. And what are the problems? There's not enough of us. We only have about 400 to 500 practicing forensic pathologists in the country. And when I say medical examiner, forensic pathologist, medical examiner is the appointed title, forensic pathologist is the training title, the board certification. My board certification is in forensic pathology, a subspecialty of pathology. Medical examiner is just what the county calls me. I am the medical examiner based on my qualification as a board certified forensic pathologist. So that's that difference. But anyway, getting back to what we're talking about, the medical examiners, there's not enough of us. The National Institute of Justice estimates we need about 1,300 to do a good job. And I just told you we had 500.
Wow.
So we're missing over half of our workforce. The good news is there's more interest in it. But the bad news is it takes, even after med school, it takes 5 years to make a forensic pathologist. You don't just make a forensic pathologist instantly one day. It's someone makes a conscious decision to go into this training and get the qualifications.
So there was a turn in the road for you somewhere in your education. You know, you started college, and then how'd that path?
Where did I turn down the dark side? Let's see. So, generally, forensic pathology is an easy sell. There's minimal call. The hours are way better. There's very little complaining. There's zero insurance companies. There's zero hospital administration. There's zero office hours. There's zero angry phone, well, they're not zero. There are angry phone calls, but they are minimal compared to clinical medicine. It's a great job. So I arrived to it based on my decision not to pursue primary care, which was my original goal. I looked at what primary care was looking like. I looked at how I thought that would be in 15, 20, 30 years, and decided that not for me. One of the great things about my job in Florida is Florida law mandates that an MD, or DO, or equivalent degree do the autopsy. No one can farm out my work to any other mid-level.
So there's no coroner in Florida?
No.
You're all at ease.
100% medical examiner serviced. One of the advantages of a coroner system is you don't have to rely on your police as much to do death investigation, because you're going to have a coroner system to do that. But high-quality police and medical examiner systems, I think, do the best job possible. And I will say, our colleagues in law enforcement in this county do a great job for us. I've been here 3 years. I have never called in a significant complaint about a detective or an investigation. Everything has been done reasonably well or well. I'm not saying mistakes aren't made here and there. It's the practice of law investigation. It's the practice of medicine. This is not a perfect science. None of this is a perfect science. If you think that, I'm in there with labs and a test tube and exactly know the answer every time to an nth degree of certainty, that's not what this is about. This is the practice of medicine. There's some uncertainty. But with that said, our law enforcement colleagues do a fantastic job here.
And I know you have a great educational relationship with the sheriff and all the deputies.
Yes.
And local law enforcement.
Yep,
And that's
the
so
cities
important.
as well. Yep.
Just going back to the field and that you're only at a third of the need for MEs. Has shows like Bones, my wife used to always watch Bones, and I feel like I know Dr. Brennan so well, but has the advent of shows helped to promote and attract people to your profession?
I think it has. I think to a degree. To be blunt, the biggest issue in the past was 20 years ago, the average salary for forensic pathologists was about $150,000. And keep in mind, I said that was a subspecialty.
Right.
You could just do your residency and get a hospital job for 6 figures more. So why in the world would you do an extra year of training for a 6-figure pay cut? It was lunacy. And I'm grateful to say that surg path jobs are kind of baseline, and forensic pathology compensation's gone way up. So we now are at a level of compensation that people can actually afford to be us. Because keep in mind, these people nowadays are graduating with $300,000-$400,000
Yeah,
in
your
debt.
schooling is huge.
Is insane.
Yeah.
So, the idea that you can pay a forensic pathologist that amount of money, it doesn't work anymore. It really doesn't. So we've enjoyed a robust increase in salaries.
We're talking with Dr. James Fulcher. He's the Chief Medical Examiner for the Medical Examiner's Office here in Volusia County. We'll take a quick break, and we'll come back and continue our talk with Dr. Fulcher. Stay with us.
I'm Will Roberts, your Volusia County tax collector. Nobody enjoys standing in line. That's why the next time you have business at the tax collector's office, skip the line by paying online. Here's how you do it. If you need to renew a vehicle registration or pay property taxes, all you need is a computer or a smartphone. To pay online, you may use a debit or credit card or your checking account. To get to the secured site, log on to vctaxcollector.org/pay. That's vctaxcollector.org/pay. Choose either vehicle registration or property tax. then type in the information that's needed to complete the transaction. Before you log on, you do need to know that the website's third-party vendor charges a service fee. The tax collector does not receive any portion of this fee. So skip the line and pay online. For more information about services the tax collector provides, please log on to vctaxcollector.org. That's vctaxcollector.org.
Volusia County is a beautiful place to live, but if
we don't respect it, who will?
Litter is a problem, one that we can solve.
But it's going to take all of us working together.
What matters is that we all do our part.
Don't be a litter bug.
And pick up litter whenever you see it.
Every litter bit counts.
Keep Volusia beautiful.
We're back. I'm Heather Belden, and you're listening to Volusia Today, a public information program brought to you by the County of Volusia. We have Kevin Captain here and Dr. Fulcher with the Volusia County Medical Examiner's Office. Let's talk a little bit about COVID-19 and all of the different changes and things that happened during it. You know, it impacted all of us, whether you were in a business or doctor's offices,
Sure.
Everything. Tell us about what you learned and maybe how it changed things.
Sure. We were lucky enough to kind of be observing what was happening in China in the very beginnings, and I'm talking, late January, maybe even early January, and realized that this might be coming our way. Before there were even U.S. cases, so my office was proactive, started looking at policy, started looking at really, and I've been told by a lot of physicians, COVID has done for the general medical community for respiratory precautions what HID did for bloodborne. We as an office, as medical examiners, as forensic pathologists, were probably a bit cavalier with respiratory precautions, masking during autopsy. We changed all that. We bought PAPRs, the 3M powered air purifiers, all the N95s we could come up with, and we weathered the storm well because of that proactive work. There were a lot of offices that were reusing N95s. We did not do that. It's one thing to reuse an N95 in a hospital setting, in an autopsy setting. That's really disturbing. That should not happen. So we were proactive, and we did a good job. We also changed protocol and policy. So we stopped doing certain procedures that we thought increased risk to staff, and we started really screening cases. We had a whole questionnaire developed for our investigators that allowed them to figure out whether or not someone was high risk for COVID or not. And then I have to say, we had an immense and valuable buy-in by the Department of Health to do our testing in the beginning. And this was before testing was easy to get and cheap. It was expensive, and they did it, and they saved us from doing some cases that could have been potential infectious issues. So I'm grateful for their support, and of course, we gave them the information we had about the decedents we were looking at in COVID as well. Outside of that, the biggest issue with COVID for this county, I hate to say it, was really the overdose uptick. When we got into the thick of the lockdown, our population in Volusia County with a substance addiction did not do well. All those social networks that help those people didn't do as much. No one in those communities would ever submit to you that virtual is as good as in person. Not for that population.
Right.
No way. In person's the standard. That's why they do it. And they suffered.
Yeah.
And I can tell you the illegal drug trade did not slow down. They just ramped up. And we had an incredible number of overdoses during that time period. I really am happy to report that's trending down now. It really has. The pendulum has swung back the other direction. People are getting the help they need. And I would say to the community that if you're involved as a counselor or a substance abuse specialist, you should be proud of the work you do, because COVID was a great example of what happens really quickly when those services are cut short. So that's really what happened. But I take a lot of positives from COVID too.
Sure.
We completely embraced technology during COVID. Digital, remote, Zoom or other video conferencing for depositions is now the standard. I remember traveling all over the place going for depots pre-COVID. They wanted me in person. Oh no, can't do it by video. We're still not doing video testimony, which is fine, but getting rid of those pesky meetings and doing them efficiently virtually is great.
Yeah, you're halfway there, and now you're able to stay at the office.
And do more work.
Right.
And everyone saves money. You're not paying for transport costs
Right.
now. I'm not dragging my butt out of the office, driving to some place on the other side of the county or in another county at another lawyer's office to spend 5 minutes talking about a case. We do the 5 minutes and I'm right back in my office.
More time to educate.
More time to educate, more time to be efficient.
Right.
And,
You know?
and you're also, I know that you are networked very well with the medical community, and you're the host of an upcoming conference or other things that are
Yep.
throughout
Yep.
the community. With that networking and that ability to share best practices, do you know or have you heard of any forensic pathologist that has acquired COVID from a case
No.
from
Have
a
not.
decedent?
No. I think at the end analysis, the risk was probably lower than we thought, but we didn't know. It was a complete unknown. To my knowledge, that has not occurred.
But still could have changed what it meant for other respiratory illnesses.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, we're doing a better job with our protection, and the next virus that comes along might be highly transmissible
Right.
from a dead body. We learned that wasn't necessarily the case here. However, I think people reacted aggressively. If we were still doing the same laissez-faire respiratory protection as a group, and I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about my community of forensic pathologists, who knows what would have happened.
Yeah.
So I think we reacted well, and we responded well. I'm actually really proud of how medical examiners responded.
So I can only imagine some of the strangest or perhaps highly unusual things that have caused someone's untimely death. In your training and daily practice, are there any peculiar cases that stand out, or some that led you down a rabbit hole and took
Sure.
forever to figure out?
Sure. There's some good ones, yeah, for sure. I've got a few favorites. One of the ones that really threw us for a loop based on scene investigation, this was in South Carolina. Very wealthy neighborhood, wealthy family, beautiful home. Wife goes off for an extended weekend. Husband ends up dead. The house looks like it's been just torn apart. You know, drawers everywhere, tables turned upside down. Interestingly, there's money everywhere, there's guns everywhere, there's jewelry. Nothing's been stolen. The house is not secure, though. So everyone's thinking, you know, blunt force trauma, maybe some hard-to-see stab wound or something. Like, how did this man die? There's blood everywhere. He's got abrasions all over his body. No one knows. But nothing's been stolen. There's no weapons. No one has a motive. So I start looking at it, and I'm like, you know, all the abrasions are on surfaces he could have bumped things. They're on his legs, his knees, his elbows. Nothing on the back. The back's spotless. A lot of injuries to the head. What happened? We do the autopsy. Turns out he has a pituitary tumor that has necrosed and destroyed his optic chiasm, where the optic nerves come together, causing intense pain and blindness. He basically had an acute exacerbation of pituitary apoplexy related to an old pituitary tumor.
I'll be darned.
And he goes blind, incredible pain, he can't see his cell phone, and he tears the house apart, looking for the phone to call 911, and dies before it happens from the tumor.
No, that's a unique case.
And I mean, and the police were on homicide. I mean, you're like, oh my God, someone murdered this guy. But there's guns around, there's money around, and there's jewelry around. If there's a homicide, usually those things kind of evaporate.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
those don't last.
But that was
at
your
the
red
scene.
flag on the scene.
Yeah,
and that's
it
why, as you
was.
mentioned before, how important it is for your office to work with law enforcement.
Yeah. And I went to that crime scene. Like, I don't often, but if they ask me, I'll go and weigh in all day long. I had one, the last one I went to here was unfortunately, an older man with cirrhosis, and he had a GI bleed and a lot of blood, basically on the walls from the GI bleed. They were worried about cast off and knife wounds and stuff, and we were able to tell, even at the scene, that this was almost certainly cirrhosis and not any sort of injury. So that was handy.
Which caused the confusion and everything else.
Exactly, all that, yeah. Another good case I have and this was in fellowship. It was a man, and it's a little complicated, so I'm going to try to keep it truncated. Essentially, he committed suicide. However, he wanted to frame his drinking buddy for homicide because his newly purchased life insurance policy would pay his wife, who he still loved, some money. So to get away with it, he shot himself in the back of the head with a long shotgun. Well, first off, for all medical examiners, being shot directly in the back of the head with a long shotgun is usually a red flag,
right?
Because people's arms aren't that long. Well, what he did is he actually set the house on fire before he shoots himself, and he pulls the trigger by tying some fishing line to the trigger and then pulling the barrel, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So he pulls the trigger with the aid of fishing line. We were ready to call it a homicide, and the police call us in a panic and say, man, we found burned fishing line residue on several pieces of furniture and the trigger. And sure enough, do a little more digging, he had just opened the insurance policy, and this was all predicated on insurance fraud.
That is just amazing. A case like that exemplifies the importance of working with law enforcement.
Oh, yeah. And this guy was looking at hard time, too. And he had a history, so that's why he tried to frame this particular individual.
Interesting. Well, with that story, Dr. Falcher, I think we'll take a break.
Okay.
We'll stay with us, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Hello, Tom Sisko coming to you from the Volusia County Emergency Operations Center. Severe wind damage and flooding can be expected with any tropical cyclone. It is important that you have a plan and know how to execute it in the event of severe weather. If you live in an evacuation zone, make sure you secure your home and head for safety. Keep fresh batteries in your NOAA weather radio in the event the power goes out. And download our free emergency management app from any smart device.
Airborne! Hey, why don't we go to the Marine Science Center? Yeah!
Are you looking for a new adventure? Come on down to the Marine Science Center in Ponce Inlet. Watch as our staff cares for sick and injured sea turtles. You can also explore our marine exhibits, touch some stingrays, visit our gift shop, and stroll through the Seabird Sanctuary. Afterward, you can visit the Ponce Inlet Lighthouse. The Marine Science Center is open every day but Monday.
Subscribe to the Volusia County YouTube channel.
Let's go!
There are so many great places to explore.
And things to learn.
We have countless features showcasing history, nature, wildlife, and recreation. Subscribe and hit the bell icon.
Go ahead, subscribe.
But that's not it. There's more. Subscribe and hit the bell icon and fully explore.
Score!
You can access Volusia County government online at volusia.org. Listen to county council meetings, pay for permits or tags, or search the property appraisers' databases. Volusia.org is your Volusia County government information resource.
We're back. I'm Heather Belden, and you're listening to Volusia Today, a public information program brought to you by the County of Volusia. Thanks for listening. Here is Kevin Captain.
Thanks, Heather. So we're talking to Dr. Fulcher with the Medical Examiner's Office in Volusia County, and okay, those were some really weird stories, but very cool. Again, let's just circle back with the last few minutes that we have. You've got an impressive multi-million-dollar unit building that's going to be. We're going to do the groundbreaking here in September.
Yep.
And what does your future look like with providing services to Volusia County residents, and what do you want to see happen in the years to come when you warm up your chair in your new office?
Yeah. First thing's name accreditation. Our office is not currently name accredited. The building we are in currently completely precludes name accreditation. Hard stop, will not pass
So
the
first goal is get the accreditation.
accreditation.
Will you be able to bring in medical students and residents?
I can do that now. So I do that now at a limited basis, but once I'm in the new building, it's a game changer. We're going to have internships. We're talking to local universities. We're going to bring in students. We're going to be doing lecture series in our new conference room. We're going to be doing autopsy teaching for appropriately vetted people, obviously. This is not.
Heather's already wanting to sign up.
I'm going to have to go back to school. Just
yeah. But I'm talking, nursing students get value from it. I used to do a thing for nursing students, med students, EMTs. Basically, anyone in medicine gets benefit from this. Anyone in law enforcement gets benefit from this. And the value is you're just putting color and reality into what the intellectual knowledge is. They can say, oh, this is a heart attack, this is a pulmonary embolism. I'm going to show it to you right there, fresh.
The real thing.
The real thing. And it's a powerful moment for those people.
Oh, sure, because once they see it, they'll never forget it.
Right. They won't forget that experience. Yeah, it's a beautiful teaching environment. It really is. It is, there's a Latin phrase which I can't do the Latin part above most morgues, but it basically says, let laughter flee. This is the place where the dead delight in teaching the living. And it's a beautiful thing because, when you think about the history of what we do,
sure,
that's all it was about. This is how anatomy was originally taught. This is a learning environment. We look at the old surgical theaters in England, in Europe. They're it's stadium seating basically for an autopsy or a surgery. But this is how you did it back then. And it's so good to see it real. And so many med schools are going virtual. I know here's a computer screen and you don't need to see this.
It's nothing like being physical presence.
It's not the same. And it's not the same. And this is such a valuable thing for the community. We have a local med student chapter here. We have the Florida State has 20 or 30 med students here. And we've opened it up to them. And we've unfortunately kind of had to cap it with them. And I'd love to do more. I do some master's teaching at UF for their forensic master's in forensic science program. And I can't take these students. I don't have space for them now. But eventually we're talking about laboratories potentially for them. So, this building is going to have educational outreach that's, going to go well beyond the county borders.
Are you going to have spots in your office? Because I know your office now has a lot of educational materials.
Yeah. We're going to have that. We're going to do some really neat stuff in the morgue for virtual examinations. So if someone's uncomfortable being in the actual space with appropriate respiratory protection and precautions, of course, we're probably going to do something with cameras mounted in surgical lights and stuff where they can still see things. And I think the police will like that too, to a degree.
Interesting.
So we're going to do some good stuff there.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Falcher, thank you so much for joining us on Volusia Today and giving us a sneak peek into the critical services that you provide here to the residents of Volusia County.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me, Kevin.
And then you bet. And one of these days, I want to see some of the welding jobs that you do.
Okay, we'll do it. That sounds like a plan, Kevin. Thank you so much.
With that, we'll close up Volusia Today. Take care, stay safe, and help your neighbors.
If you have a comment about Volusia Today, or if there is a topic you would like to hear featured, please contact Volusia County Community Information at 1-866-345-0345.